Major news today from the world of organized crime. Fox Undercover is confirming that a purported leader of the Boston mob, Mark Rosetti, is also an informant for the FBI. Rosetti is a longtime member of the mob's Boston faction, and in addition to having a long criminal record, Fox Undercover has also learned that he is a suspect in several murders. In his most recent case, state prosecutors are charging him with being the leader of a crew that engaged in crimes including heroin trafficking, home invasions, and extortion. Prosecutors in that case say they were unaware of Rosetti's relationship with the FBI until a state police wiretap caught him talking to his FBI handler. While court papers in that case mention the informant, they don't identify him though. But those papers show that the informant was caught talking to his handler some 40 times, including conversations about the FBI protecting him from prosecution, the Gardner Museum art heist, and payments from the FBI. The FBI not confirming Rosetti's identity, but said they complied with Justice Department rules requiring they report informants' criminal activity. In a joint statement, the FBI and state police say, quote, "The FBI employees responsible for handling this matter did not engage in any inappropriate activity, and that the FBI was prepared to cut off its relationship with the informant, but kept it up so they wouldn't interfere with the state police investigation." But as more information is released, this could prove embarrassing to the FBI in Boston. It's the same bureau that cultivated James Whitey Bulger as an informant. Fox Undercover talked to the head of the state police organized crime unit earlier this year about Rosetti's arrest.
How dangerous of a man is he?
He's probably the most feared guy that was on the street at the time.
So to get him off the street?
It's a good one for us. Bad one for them.
Rosetti's attorney did not return a call seeking comment.
Old wounds between two law enforcement agencies torn wide open tonight as the controversy about an FBI informant who's also a leader in the New England Mafia intensifies. Two retired state police organized crime investigators are lashing out at the FBI, saying the feds never should have used Mark Rosetti as an informant. Investigative reporter Mike Beaudat sat down with the retired detectives this afternoon.
The retired state police detectives I spoke with were both on the front lines of the Whitey Bulger investigation. They lived through the FBI's corruption in the Bulger case, in which Bulger was protected by the feds and ultimately tipped off to his indictment, allowing Bulger to elude capture for years. They hoped that was a thing of the past, but now they say they're not so sure.
There's such mistrust that's built up over the years.
Retired state police detective lieutenants Bob Long and Jack O'Malley are unloading their frustration with the FBI.
I think sometimes the FBI thinks that organized crime is their domain. Stay away from it. We'll handle the organized crime stuff.
The veteran organized crime investigator speaking out after revelations that this man, Mark Rosetti, was a longtime FBI informant. Rosetti was arrested last year after a state investigation, accused of running a highly organized and violent criminal enterprise.
This is a bad guy we're talking about?
Oh, yeah.
He's one of the worst of the worst. In my tenure there as the commander of the organized crime unit, his name would come up all the time.
Court papers filed last week by defense attorney Bob George reveal state police secretly recorded Rosetti talking to his FBI handler about 40 times. The court documents mention the informant, but do not identify him as Rosetti.
Should the FBI have been using Mark Rosetti as an informant?
In my opinion, no. It's a very, very similar case to the Bulger case.
Based on his history of being suspect in many murders and trafficking heroin onto our streets, no way should he have been an informant. They should be out targeting him. You deal up, you don't deal down. In other words, they're going to him for information about who? His subordinates or enemies that might be trying to weasel their way into his organization and take it over. You just don't do it that way.
Why wouldn't you want to use someone like Rosetti as an informant?
Because of his history of violence, and you cannot always know what he's doing.
Fox Undercover also learned state police earlier asked the FBI if Rosetti was an informant, and the FBI said no. No comment from the retired investigators on that, but they keep thinking about the Whitey Bulger case.
It seems to be happening all over again.
Does that surprise you?
It's disappointing.
Disappointing.
The FBI not reacting specifically to what the retired state police investigators are saying, but a spokesperson referred us to a joint press release issued last Friday by the FBI and the state police, in which the FBI says it was prepared to stop using Rosetti as an informant after being notified by the state police about Rosetti's alleged criminal activity, but that the state police asked the FBI to continue the relationship so that Rosetti wouldn't be tipped off.
So, Mike, what's the state police brass saying about these retired guys speaking out?
The brass not too happy. In a statement, state police spokesman David Procopio says those who have had no involvement with this investigation and who yet still have somehow seen fit to criticize aspects of it fail to acknowledge that no rules were broken and that a dangerous suspect was taken into custody. We make no apologies for the handling of this investigation and our cooperation with the FBI in regard to the intercepted conversations. So some pretty strong words for the retired investigators.
I'll say, what's all this mean for the pending state case against Rosetti?
There are 31 people, Mark, including Rosetti, who have been indicted. The revelation that Rosetti was an FBI informant could absolutely cause problems for the prosecutors. There will be hearings in the coming months to sort it all out.
Fox 25's Mike Beaudet. Thanks, Mike.
Did the FBI allow a prize mob informant to be a heroin dealer? New revelations tonight from Fox Undercover that the FBI was given a chance 20 years ago to make a case against a well-known organized crime figure, but they took a pass.
Well, now that informant is facing a laundry list of new charges, including dealing heroin. Our investigative reporter Mike Beaudet with the new information.
Mark Rosetti was an up-and-coming mobster in the early 1990s. That's when a state police sergeant named Bill McGreal got a tip that Rosetti was becoming a major heroin dealer in East Boston. McGreal offered the case to the FBI, but it's what happened next that's only now beginning to make sense.
We're not even past the high Hawaii stage when he says, I'm just going to explain something to you. Something goes wrong with this deal. Something's going to go seriously wrong for you guys.
Retired State Police Sergeant Bill McGreal recalling his first encounter with Mark Rosetti. It was 1979. McGreal was working undercover, and Rosetti was an up-and-coming wise guy.
This kid's 21, maybe at the time, 22, something like that. And, you know, he's like right out of central casting from The Godfather. I mean, this is like incredible. And I had never dealt with anybody that young that was trying to act so mobbed up.
McGreal says he later bought a small bag of cocaine from Rosetti, but the case never went anywhere. The next day, Rosetti pleaded guilty to assaulting and nearly killing an off-duty state trooper. But it wasn't the last time McGreal encountered Rosetti. More than a decade later, around 1992, a drug user came to McGreal with an offer. He'd go undercover and buy drugs from Rosetti in exchange for help getting out of jail. This time, though, Rosetti was no up-and-coming wise guy, and his record had grown to include a conviction for an armored car robbery.
So I decide, being a good guy, the FBI is looking at members of La Cosa Nostra. This guy's either made or he's about to be made. And I've got an informant who tells me I can do hand-to-hand sales with Mark Rosetti. And he says he's willing to do it.
McGreal calls the FBI and meets with them.
And my informant lays out clearly his dealings, heroin trafficking, purchases of heroin from Rosetti. And he explains more about Rosetti's dealings and says he's really an up-and-coming heroin mover in the East Boston area.
A few hours after the meeting, the FBI called McGreal to talk about the case.
And I'm told we're going to take a pass on Rosetti. And I'm saying to myself, this guy is really a guy who's got a propensity for violence with 2 convictions of crimes of violence in the armored car and in the assault with intent to murder on a trooper. He's got a drug distribution thing, and now he's dealing heroin, and he's moving around pretty good in East Boston, and they're going to pass on him? It didn't make any sense.
Hearing now that Rosetti was an informant for the FBI, does it make sense?
It would make sense, because if you get a guy dealing heroin, and you know he's either in the mob or he's about to go in the mob, what better time than to take him off?
McGreal says it's likely that Rosetti's arrest then would have prevented future crimes. But what angers him more is that the FBI would go into business with someone convicted of nearly killing a fellow trooper.
Part of the outrage on this to me is that you got a guy that almost killed a trooper. Almost killed him. And then he goes out and he holds up an armored car. They have to be looking the other way. It has to be the same as Bulger. He's more important to us as a top echelon informant than he is as a target of an investigation.
Another part of Rosetti's background the FBI was apparently willing to overlook is that Rosetti is considered a suspect in several murders. And while it's not clear exactly when Rosetti became an informant, a defense attorney in the current case said in court recently that Rosetti was caught with an FBI agent's beeper number in his pocket in 1992. The FBI declined to comment for this story, but the agency has said its handling of the informant in this case was done by the book. I'm Mike Bodette for Fox Undercover.
And another Fox Undercover update tonight in the ongoing saga of reputed mobster Mark Rosetti, who was also an FBI informant. Congressman Stephen Lynch has been demanding answers from the FBI about whether the feds knew Rosetti was allegedly committing crimes while he was working as an informant. Lynch appeared on the Fox 25 Morning News today saying he's not getting anywhere with the FBI.
We've been back and forth with the FBI. They're concerned about reporting, or disclosing to me facts of an ongoing investigation, so we're sort of at odds on this.
Congressman Lynch says he now has a meeting scheduled with the FBI in Washington. No comment from the FBI yet on this standoff.
The New England Mafia isn't quite what it used to be.
It really isn't, and it seems like every month there's another mobster arrested or identified as an informant. The latest charges coming just a few weeks ago, resulting in more reputed mobsters in custody and more evidence the mafia is full of informants. So here's the question, Shannon. Is this finally the end for the New England mob?
This meeting, secretly caught on video by Fox Undercover, is referred to in the latest federal indictment charging New England mobsters and their associates. It happened in November 2009 at a restaurant in East Boston, Carmen's Kitchen, a meeting of the men believed to be running La Cosa Nostra, the New England LCN, better known as the Mafia. Here's the reputed boss at the time, Peter Lamoni, and to his right, Bobby DeLuca, up from Providence. The indictment is a window into the conversation at this table. According to the paperwork, a high-ranking mafia figure and another mafia member discussed, among other things, the distribution of proceeds from the extortion of Rhode Island strip clubs. The two mafia figures were known to the grand jury, which issued the criminal charges, which likely means that at least one of these men testified about the meeting. Michael Sullivan is a former U.S. attorney from Massachusetts.
It seems like there's a rat in the restaurant.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a rat, but I suspect that, people, sitting at that meeting are trying to narrow it down in terms of who is the source of the information that they have in the indictment.
Clearly, we weren't the only ones watching them that night.
It doesn't appear that way based on the indictment.
The indictment also alleges that starting around that time, up until last month, a mafia captain would travel from Rhode Island to Massachusetts to pay a portion of the money collected from the adult entertainment industry to the New England Mafia leadership. Those charged in the latest case include Louis Babyshanks Monacchio. He's the former boss of the New England Mafia from Providence, before the power center shifted to Boston a few years ago. State and federal authorities have charged many of the men they say ran the mob in New England, including Carmen the Cheeseman D'Annunzio, who's in federal prison. Peter Lamoni pleaded no contest to running an organized crime gambling ring. And Darren Buffalino and Mark Rosetti are both locked up awaiting trial.
Is the mafia as we know it over?
No, I can't say it's completely over. I think it's clearly been decimated, and I think it's probably now being challenged by what's on the management side is oftentimes referred to as the Peter Principle, where people are being elevated within the organization because of the tremendous voids that have been created as a result of law enforcement activity.
Law enforcement activity also led to revelations that Rosetti, a purported mob captain, was a longtime FBI informant who, while passing on information to the feds, was also allegedly committing serious violent crimes. He's facing state charges alleging drug trafficking, gambling, and extortion.
What happened to the code of silence?
Well, you wonder if it was ever really a true code of silence. It seems that, as people began to get jammed up and they looked at these, long sentences, in some instances life sentences, they realized the person they're going to be most loyal to was themselves.
The criminal activity of the New England La Cosa Nostra has been severely disrupted. In simple terms, the Providence Organized Crime Task Force has shattered Omerta, the New England LCN's code of silence.
At a news conference last month announcing the latest charges against the reputed New England mobsters and their associates, the FBI's Jeff Zillette said targeting the mafia remains a priority.
We will use every capability and tool we have at our disposal to continue dismantling the New England La Cosa Nostra and thwart other groups from becoming entrenched in our communities.
Are there any serious players left?
Yeah, I suspect that there are, but they're certainly on everybody's radar screen, and likely, I'm confident that they're constantly looking over their shoulders. Yeah, because they know that there is no loyalty within the organization. When they've seen over a period of time some of the highest ranking members of their organization become cooperators with the government, they know that they can't trust anybody.
State police declined to be interviewed for this story, citing the ongoing criminal case involving Mark Rosetti. The FBI did agree to sit down with us for an interview, but after the feds heard the state police wouldn't be talking to us, they backed out.